This is a question worth pondering. How relevantly are the Bearcats on a national level heading into 2023?
Are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you very much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. It is free and available everywhere that you get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow it to get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day right here on Locked On Bearcats. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So the question I asked you in the cold open is, how relevant are the Bearcats on a national level? And I think the answer to that question is largely going to determine how much they are talked about in 2023. It is a really interesting topic to think about. Yesterday, I told you about college football teams that are relevant regardless of what they do in a certain season. Teams like Tennessee, who've had a lot of mediocre seasons, this past season was a really good season. Notre Dame has had down seasons in years past, and yet they're relevant every single year. The Cincinnati Bearcats, how relevant are they nationally? You have to think about several factors. You have to think about their body of work. How extensive is it? Yes, it's really good over the last 5 years. Locally, we celebrate 14 bowl games in 17 years. Is that celebrated, though, on a national level? Nowhere in there is a national championship included. Yes, they've made the college football playoff, which is something that several programs can't say they have. Penn State can't say they have, and yet they're probably relevant every year. Texas has never made the college football playoff. USC has never made the college football playoff, and they're relevant every single season. So the answer to, there's body of work, there's the fan base. How rabid is your fan base? Like, Ohio State fans are everywhere, right? Bearcat fans, they're popular. There's a lot up here in Columbus. I'm sure there's a lot in Cleveland, Chicago, Louisville maybe, Indianapolis. What about outside the tri-state? What about outside the tri-state? Is there a rabid fan base of the Cincinnati Bearcats? And that, I think, determines how relevant you are nationally. Notre Dame fans are everywhere. Ohio State fans, as I've already mentioned. USC, maybe more so California. Texas fans, they're rabid. SEC fans are, rabid within their own geographical area. But you think about the Bearcats fan base. It's grown in the last 5 years. Will it continue to grow as this program gets into Power 5 play? Duke basketball fans are everywhere. Same with North Carolina. Duke was relevant this year. Why? First year with post Mike Krzyzewski. They struggled early, finished strong. North Carolina's always relevant. Even when they stink, they're relevant. Kansas basketball is always relevant. I mean, Kansas basketball's won, 17 Big 12 regular season titles in the last 20 years. The difference between those teams and Cincinnati is they have an extensive body of work. The Bearcats really don't. Now, last year I said that the 2022 season was going to be the most important in Bearcats history because it was the bridge season between the college football playoff and the move to the Big 12. But there's also something to be said that this upcoming season is going to be just as important because it's your first season in the Big 12 and you got to continue to do what you've been doing the last 5 seasons to prove that A, those aren't a fluke, and B, your move to the Big 12 is not a fluke. Like, the Bearcats got invited to the Big 12 at a time of an apex for the program. They were coming off of a really good 2020 season, a near victory against Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Georgia's only lost one game since then. And they were in the top 10 of the AP poll, and they were a dark horse candidate for the college football playoff. And it's rare that a team lives up to the hype going into a season. That Bearcats team did. And there is something to be said about that. So I think about the Bearcats on a national level. And in football, it is a very select few teams that are relevant. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, those teams are relevant. Notre Dame was relevant this past year, even though they started 0-2. And USC, I'll throw in there. Texas, I'll throw in there. Oklahoma, you can maybe throw in there. Michigan. Like, TCU doesn't have the national year-to-year relevancy that the teams I just mentioned do. The Bearcats are relevant, but not like the teams, not like the Blue Bloods. The Bearcats have to defy expectations, and they have to catch the college football world by surprise, take it by storm, to be talked about as much as the name brand schools. And just because they're in the Big 12 does not mean they automatically get talked about more. And that might be frustrating for you. But what I would tell you is they're in a much better position than a lot of schools that we've seen over the years. I'm talking about Memphis. They have a good basketball program. Their football program has been mediocre since they won the conference title 4 years ago. SMU, they have good athletic programs, but yet you feel like they're stuck in purgatory. Not much to say purgatory, but like kind of like a mediocre cycle, if you will. So there are a lot of worse positions to be in if you're the Cincinnati Bearcats than what other teams are in. You're in the Big 12. And I get it. College football realignment still might be coming. But for now, you're in a Power 5 conference. Something that this university has longed for years. And it finally is here. They're relevant on a national level. Maybe not like an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia. But they are relevant. The national media landscape, they know about the Bearcats. Not on a year-to-year basis. But if the Bearcats, let's say next year, that Cincinnati, let's say this coming season Cincinnati starts off 4-0. They beat Oklahoma. They'll get talked about. And they go on the road and be BYU. They'll get talked about. Coming up, how does national relevancy contribute to pressure, if any, that's on the Bearcats this upcoming season? We'll get into all of that after I explain to you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Built Bar. So the amazing thing about podcasting is I recorded this as the national championship was happening. So you know who won, but at the time I recorded this, I didn't because the game was still going on. But anyway, the Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for the cookie dough chunk puff. And you, if you want a certain team to win, well, I guess if you're listening to this, the tournament's over. But you know what? Support your team, support your bar or puff. There we go. And your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. Built is the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're so amazing, you won't think they're good for you. What makes Built bars and puffs so good? Well, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. By the way, it's now officially April. But anyway, Cincinnati and national relevancy. How does that contribute to the pressure that's on the Bearcats this season, if there is any? How you assess whether the Bearcats are under pressure, I think depends on how you view. If you're going to go off of what they've done the last 5 years, then yes, they are. If you understand the reality of the program, maybe you don't think so. But I think there is pressure. Because, again, the situation Scott Satterfield is walking into is a much better situation than what Luke Fickell walked into. This is just a changing of the guard. Now, I don't know if it's going to be like Lincoln Riley year one. Oklahoma recently changed coaches. They had a down season last year. It may be like that. But what I'm saying is, I believe that with the recruiting that's in place, with the talent that's here, the core of guys, and Lance McAllister does this, the core 5 with the Bengals. I might do a show later on this offseason, a core of 5 for the Cincinnati Bearcats. But you have a core of players that you believe can lead this team to at least a bowl game for the 15th time in 18 seasons, or maybe something bigger than that. But there is a belief that there is pressure on this team, given what they've done over the last 5 years. And here's the unique thing about the Cincinnati Bearcats. And it's been this way since they were in the Big East. You know, Cincinnati is most of your college teams are not in big cities. You look around your Power 5 conferences. But what's so unique about Cincinnati is that it is in a metropolitan city, but yet they've had some good teams and they've been relevant. They've been to the BCS New Year's Six. They play in a metropolitan city. That to me matters. And that to me is what makes Cincinnati so unique. So, in terms of pressure, because of the success the Bearcats have had, and because they play in a city where a lot of fans, students, alumni, they care about the University of Cincinnati. And if you follow this program for as long as I have, then you would know that there is pressure on this program. There wasn't that in 2016 and 2017. And yes, prior to that, the Bearcats only had 2 seasons in the last 11 seasons where they did not make a bowl game. But still, the pedigree and the success that the last 5 years established, I don't care who the head coach is. I don't care what players are in that locker room. This program has higher standards now than they had in 2017 or in any season prior to this season. Well, I shouldn't say that, but there are high standards for this program, very high standards. And just because there's a new head coach doesn't mean the pressure and expectations go away. The pressure, at least, is not. How about expectations? We'll get into that after we hear from 2 of our sponsors. There's a difference between pressure and expectations. Expectations are what you think the team is going to do. Pressure is something you put on yourself or a team to achieve something. But the expectations for this team should still be moderate. I'm not saying they should be Big 12 championship game. If they get there, great. If they don't, no, it's not the end of the world. Expectations, considering this is okay, and this is where I'll take the side of where the program currently is, because it's not nearly as talented as it was last year. Tyler Scott's no longer here. Trey Tucker's no longer here. Wiley and Taylor are no longer here. A lot of key positions that have been integral parts to the team's success over the last, 20 years, they're needing to be replenished. And it is okay to be in this position. Lots of teams go through it. Alabama goes through it every year because they put 10 players a year in the NFL. The Bearcats have not done that on a consistent basis. But you want to turn that corner from being a really good program to a great program, you weather the storm this year and you go out and finish 8-4 or 9-3. But is that expectation? The answer to me is no. What's a reasonable expectation is for this team to get better and better every single week. I am saying there is pressure on this program, but I'm not expecting them to be really good. I'm expecting a bowl game for the 15th time in 18 seasons. I'm not expecting a Big 12 championship. I'm not expecting a New Year's Six Bowl. What I am expecting is for this team to be competitive. What I am expecting is for the defense to keep them in every single game. What I am expecting is the offense to be better than it was last year and better than maybe you think. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting this team to win every home game but one, maybe two. I'm expecting this team to win every game they're supposed to win. See, I'm keeping it realistic. Expectations are different than pressure. You think the Bearcats are going to go 7-5, but you have pressure because you know what they've done in the past, and you know that there are more equitable resources here now than there were in 2017. There's a difference between pressure and expectations. Expectations are what you think this team is going to do. I think this team can be really good. I think that they're going to be somewhere between 5-7, 6-6, 7-5. Really, there's no in between. Okay, maybe 6-6, 8-4. That's where I think this team, or expect this team, is going to be. There's pressure on this program to continue to do what they've been doing for the last 18 years. But you don't expect them to be necessarily that good or great this season. There's a good chance tomorrow that Neil Meyer of the Front Office News is going to join me on Locked On Bearcats. But before I go, I want to, as a colleague of his and a man that I have come to know over the last few seasons, I want to extend my thoughts and prayers and love to Chad Brendel, the owner of Bearcat Journal, and his family, Kelly and Kelsey, and all those family and friends who know him. As many of you know, Chad's wife, Kelly, has been battling cancer for several years now, and things took a turn for a dramatic turn for the worse last night. If you follow Chad on Twitter, he has been documenting this, and it is, as someone who has gone through this before, has lost a loved one to cancer, I understand the pain. So, again, sending thoughts, prayers, and love to Chad, his wife Kelly, and Kelsey, and all of family and friends that they know. Sending all thoughts. And, man, it's just really, really sad to see what's going on with Chad and his family. But as Chad would do, carry on. We're going to do the same thing. Back tomorrow here on Locked On Bearcats. I'm on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's, NNATI. Instagram, AlexFrank9_. Email, alex3frank@gmail.com. Hey, thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. How about for your second listening? Check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Back tomorrow here on Locked On Bearcats. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.